Hello, everybody. It's me, Bo Wulf, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast. I'm sitting next to my good friend, Zach Berman, and we're here to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles the day after Jason Kelce's retirement press conference. How you doing, Zach?
Doing well. Excited for the show.
We've got a few Jason Kelce articles up on allphly.com that everybody can read. We've also got the list of the top 100 free agent targets for the Eagles. Dive into that. We're
From
going
Bo Wulf's perspective.
No, actually, I hacked into the mainframe and got the access. Now, I moved a couple things around just to make it not obvious, but the bones of it are still in there.
Well, I would have had Mekhi Becton a little higher than you did, but we can.
Yes, we know that in the Zach Berman free agency rankings, you bump everybody who was a former first-round pick up by about 50% of their value.
Yeah, Kenneth Murray would have been higher on my list.
Sure,
but
you said Chase Young is the guy that you wanted in the top 15.
I was salivating over that ranking. But I would say, and I said this on the show yesterday, you did an awesome job. Make sure you're reading it. Make sure you're a diehard. And it's really, the cool thing about that piece is it's not just something you read once, but you can circle back as these names come on and off the board, as some names presumably will today with the franchise tag deadline.
Darius Williams reportedly going to be released by the Jacksonville Jaguars. 30 years old, cornerback, guy who has some ball skills. Yeah, might have to sneak him into the back end of that top 100
and not coup off.
Well, the last
DeAndre
three are
Carter?
all going to stay. Yeah, they're all going to stay in those spots. That 98, 99, 100. Those guys are locked in. So yeah, your boy Becton might have to get bumped.
That's a shame. That's a shame because he's going to be a player in his next place.
You think so?
I mean, I wouldn't bet the house on it, but I always like to give talent another opportunity.
Okay. Now, I get that. We've had this discussion many times. I don't think that there is a great track record of first-round disappointments turning into really good players elsewhere. Feels like those are the guys who have been given every chance to succeed. You're almost more likely to find someone who has been overlooked by the place where they were and giving them an opportunity.
No, sometimes there's circumstances that whether it's coaching, whether it's system changes, there's a handful of different things. Sometimes, frankly, a player's contract's a little too high, and there's a fifth-year option that you don't exercise. Therefore, the player hits the market. There's different ways of viewing this, but there are guys who they go somewhere else and they thrive. And then there are other guys like Chance Warmack here in Philly where he was what he was, and there's a reason why the Titans didn't keep him. So I see your point. Right. I see your point. It kind of works both ways. But one of my blind spots in evaluation is sometimes I remember what they were when I first evaluated them or when I used to watch them, that kind of thing, as opposed to what the player that they are now.
Now, I would say
it's an anchoring bias to properly title it.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. But we're going to get into all this. We want to talk today about some sort of players in that 100 who are worth having a longer discussion about as we approach Quacketology tomorrow and Thursday. We want to get through that a little quicker. So some extended conversations on guys. Today I want to pose some Woodpecker You Rathers to you. But
one of my favorite games.
Before we get going, anything else left on the cutting room floor from Jason Kelce that we should talk about before moving forward?
No, I thought yesterday's show was good, and I think I loved Bo's piece today. It touched me as a father. I found it touching as a father, I should say. And there was, as I watched back and read through the transcript, it was so well written. Like, it was so well done. And there were little things in there I didn't pick up in real time. But no, I think our pieces today and our show yesterday did a good job summarizing it.
Okay, well, you can check those out again on allphly.com and on our YouTube page. Okay, Zach, let's start with L'Jarius Sneed, who is the headliner here on this episode. Already tagged by the Kansas City Chiefs, but reports are that they are open to trading.
Yes.
Right?
I'm expecting them to do so.
They need to sign Chris Jones. There's only so much room to go around. I think they want to spend some money on the offense this offseason. L'Jarius Sneed, 27 years old. Inside-outside versatility. Last year was one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. He did also lead the NFL with 11 defensive penalties among cornerbacks. This is a player who is theoretically in his prime, although cornerback performance notoriously a little bit unsticky year to year. But I would make the case that for the Eagles, as much as they need help at linebacker and safety, you look at the list of the top 100 guys that I have there, like the cornerback options are not great.
No.
They're mostly guys who are 29 and 30 years old, and if you're going to sign one of those guys, do you really need to pay the money to release James Bradbury? Would you rather just roll the dice with him?
Who you're already paying, no
right,
matter what.
Who you're already paying. So, like, I think you can make a case that the most significant upgrade they can make on the defense is a lockdown corner, and those guys are not available. So, with 2 second-round picks, if you were the Eagles, would you consider trading for L'Jarius Sneed?
No. I would
You wouldn't
not
even consider it.
I would not give up a second-round pick for L'Jarius Sneed and then go on to pay him $20 million. That's just not the way I would personally operate. In your piece, and we're allowed to reference this specifically. You have to be a diehard to read the whole piece, but one thing Bo mentions in there is a Reddick for Sneed swap. That would be more interesting to me. Like, that would make sense to me. Okay, you're trading a starter for a starter, a blue chip player for a blue chip player. I value edge rushers more, but there's the age
Couple
delta
years
there.
older.
Exactly.
He doesn't want to be here, maybe.
Yeah, so that would interest me more than I don't want to give up. I would not give up a second-round pick and then go on and pay $20 million. There's just there's not enough data points to show free agent corners are, have that type of consistency when you pay them that type of money. I would rather try to develop corners, something the Eagles haven't done well organically.
Easier said than done.
Much easier said than done for sure. But that's not something that would interest me. They did it for Slay a few years ago, and it was a third and a fifth, right? And then they go on and they give him a big deal.
And he was 28 at the time?
And he was 28 at the time. So, and that's a trade the Eagles would make again. I'm curious your thoughts. I would not trade a second-round pick for him and then go on and pay him $20 million.
So I would be surprised if Howie Roseman is not sniffing around this and considering it, because of the reason I said that I do think that, like, locking in a premier corner opposite Darius Slay is probably the biggest difference they can make on the defense in one addition. And we know that he likes to be involved in everything.
Yes.
What would worry me is just the general volatility of performance at the cornerback position. Mm-hmm. Now, like, the penalties are one thing, and maybe it gives you, like, bad flashbacks to Byron Maxwell. But like, I think Sneed is a good enough player, a versatile enough player that he would be able to overcome those things. You're getting him a little bit more like in the middle of his prime than anybody else who you could add. We know Howie Roseman. We know that he, as Jason Kelce said yesterday, like, he's going to try to do everything he can to make the team as good as it can be this year. I do not expect him to just sort of check a couple boxes in free agency and go toward the draft. I think there's probably some kind of significant trade coming, and cornerback makes the most sense to me. So Sneed is like the guy who seems obvious, but would I trade a second-round pick and pay him? Probably not, but I would be if it's a third-round pick and something else, I would probably make that deal.
Do you think the evaluation of Keely Ringo should factor into this at all?
It should factor into it. I don't think it should because to me, if you were to trade for L'Jarius Sneed, it's a perfect situation.
It's the next 5 years, yeah.
It's one more year, and then Keely Ringo is able to take over for Darius Slay.
Yep,
If
exactly.
he is who you think he is, right? I don't think that you want Keely Ringo to have to be the number 2 corner this year. If he could, if you end up signing a Band-Aid type player instead of trading for a stud and he beats that person out, that's great. But I think you want him ready to be the number 3 corner, because you also have to be prepared for, Darius Slay to either be injured or drop off in terms of effectiveness.
Now, Dane Brugler, who we both respect at The Athletic, he's the draft analyst there. He has a mock draft out today, and he has the Eagles trading up to number 17 to take Terrion Arnold. Okay, and in that deal, he has them giving up 97, so that's a 3rd-round pick, and then a 2025 4th-round pick to move up, and you're getting a guy who's potentially the top corner in the draft, but also you don't know. Whereas with a free agent player, there's a better sense of who he is at the NFL level. If you're going to trade draft picks for a starting corner, would you rather trade up in the draft and get a guy like Arnold, who might be the best corner, or would you rather trade that draft pick and then spend the money and then then you still have your 1st-round pick at your disposal to take that right tackle, to take edge rusher, to take someone at a premium position?
It depends entirely on the
player,
on the context
sure.
and the player, right? Depends how old they are. I would rather have the player locked in if it was the right fit. But yeah, it's so context dependent.
And then you
know one guy I'm thinking about. The Panthers obviously have lost some draft capital. They've got a new staff. Are they as attached to J.C. Horn as the previous regime?
Well, J.C. Horn had a down year this year. He was benched at one point. So that's a good point. Maybe, in his 5th-year option's coming up, and they're going to have the decision whether to exercise it or not. If they don't exercise it, do you want J.C. Horn as a lame duck? I shouldn't say lame duck, on an expiring contract.
They liked J.C. Horn.
The Eagles really like J.C. Horn. Still only 24 years old.
And
24 years old.
He has very high quality tape
traits
in the past.
Exactly.
Yes.
That would interest me, and that's going to cost you. It'll probably cost you less than it's certainly going to cost you less financially than Sneed, but you probably don't even have to give up a 2nd-round pick. Maybe it's a 3rd and a 5th. So it could be the Slay deal, right? That would interest me. I like the way you think there. I like the way you
It's a
think.
former 1st-round pick. Yeah. Of course you like it.
Now, on your draft ranking, your free agent rankings, the next player you had on the board is Jalen Johnson, who we're expecting to be tagged at corner. Are there any other high-level corners where you say this guy, let's take the Sneed thing off the table. So you're not going to trade a 2nd-rounder, or you're not going to pay the price for Sneed. What's in that tier that they paid? The Eagles haven't really fished at the top. They haven't paid at the top of the free agent market. They're much more into paying that 2nd tier of players and that like $10 to $15 million range, as opposed to the $15 to $22 million range.
Yeah, I think the lesson of doing this exercise for me was that I don't know that the Eagles need to sign a corner if they don't, add somebody of L'Jarius Sneed's quality, because, I'll just go down the list here. Jalen Johnson, as you said, then Kendall Fuller, who's 29. Christian Fulton is an interesting one, who was also benched last year, but it's not the case that he was bad throughout his entire career. He was really good a year ago. You're looking for that ceiling. That's a guy you could potentially talk yourself into if the deal is right. But then Akella Witherspoon is 28. Chidobe Awuzie is 29. Amik Robertson, I think, is kind of interesting and could be interesting if the Eagles...
Slot guy.
But he played on the outside this year, so he can do both. He is customarily a slot guy. He's only 5'9". If the Eagles are moving on from Avonte Maddox, that's a guy who would make sense. And then it's Michael Davis after that. So I think this is one where it's either the very top of the market or the bottom of the market. I don't expect them to have interest in the middle class of free agents for what is a pretty weak crop.
Marshawn Lattimore is someone who his name's circulating as he could be on the market here. 27 years old. It's a big contract, but when you trade for it, the contract's a little different, of course. You're looking at high base salaries, in 2025, there's a $16 million base salary. 2026, there's a $16.5 million base salary. There's a guaranteed salary of $12 million in 2024. But what would you let's say the price is a little less than it would be for Sneed. Let's say it's a third-round pick. Or let's say it's the Slay deal.
He's how old?
He's 27 right now. He'll be 28 this season.
I'm not uninterested.
Okay.
I think that's where they would shop. That's where they would fish, I think. If they're going to make corner a priority, it's going to be a trade.
And so you're willing to give up picks for a corner?
It's not my typical MO, but if I'm trying to think like Howie and he wants to turn this thing around, and he made the joke about how much personnel sway Vic Fangio's going to have, but like he's going to want a corner. I just think that's where you have to get them, unless you're willing to just go into the draft and say we're using one of our first or second round picks on a corner.
Yeah, look, I'm not here to defend James Bradberry, and he had a down year last year. There's a bad year last year, not just a down year, a bad year last year. There's no denying it. The team did not anticipate the age curve hitting him the way it did. It was his age 29 season. Clearly, the NFL, the way they valued Bradberry was more accurate than the way the Eagles did, because Bradberry couldn't get the money that he wanted elsewhere. That said, you're going to pay Bradberry next year, whether he's on your roster or not. You get to a point with some of these veteran guys, like you mentioned, Darius Williams, or some of these players who've been cut. Let's say Xavier Howard. And again, I don't know the Xavier Howard relationship with Vic Fangio, but you get to a point where you say, can James Bradberry rebound and play at that level when you're already paying him? Then cutting James Bradberry, eating up that money, and signing someone who's in that 29 to 30-year-old range, who you don't know if they're going to have that age dip than some other guys. The reason why Sneed or J.C. Horn, someone like that, would be interesting to me is you're talking about a mid-20s player as opposed to just a name in their late 20s.
And do you agree with the general sentiment that corner is a place where they can make the biggest single upgrade?
Well, no. I mean,
because you think that there's hope for Bradberry.
Well, and I think there's hope for Ringo too. I'm higher on Ringo than maybe some others are. I was real impressed. It was a small sample size, but from that Seattle game on, he showed me a lot. I am also colored by the Kansas City Chiefs experience here and seeing like guys who they drafted and they just let them play, similar to what Sneed was. And I mean, Trent McDuffie was a first-round pick, but they have other guys in there too, like a Joshua Williams and players like that who you get them on the field, they take their lumps, but then they're decent contributors. Like there's a reason why the Chiefs are willing to move on from L'Jarius Sneed, because they've done a really good job drafting and developing. Shout out to Dave Merritt, the D-backs coach there. He was a Giants D-backs coach when I was covering the Giants. But so I would say that I would see what you have in Akili Ringo, in Eli Ricks, draft someone in the first 2-3 rounds. I'm not saying Bradberry's on my 53 next year, but I am bringing Bradberry to OTAs and just seeing seeing how he meshes with this coaching staff. Because, like I said, this isn't me endorsing Bradberry. You're paying Bradberry no matter what. So you're either paying him to be off the team or you're paying him to be on the team. And there
are some other reasons to release him, but
yeah. But I would.
But also, if Fletcher Cox retires, that's 2 spots for post June 1 cuts. So they would sort of have to keep Bradberry on the roster until June 1.
Well, the Kelce thing wouldn't be a cut, right? It would just be they hold him on the roster till June 1st, and then he retires. Okay. Yeah, the post June 1 designation is like you cut a guy in March, and it.
Well, I know, but isn't there some incentive for them to do that with Kelce?
They can keep Kelce on the roster until June 1, and then the retirement.
Doesn't open up a room if they do that? Do I have that wrong?
Open up a roster spot, you mean?
No, I don't mean a roster spot. Anyway,
we
don't need to get in the weeds on this.
Okay, yeah. No, I think it's set up for the retirement to go in effect on June 1st. I could be wrong there, but it's the same thing happened with Brandon Brooks. He announced the retirement in the middle of the year, and then it actually didn't go into in January, and then it didn't go into effect until post June 1st.
All right. Well, if you are worried about like your floors bottoming out like James Bradbury's appeared to last year, you might want to give Empire Today a call, because with Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they've got copycats, but they can't beat Empire Today on quality, service, speed, and all the good stuff. So they're going to advertise low-quality products that Empire Today simply will not carry. That stuff is beneath them. Empire Today won't promise the lowest prices, because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in theirs. That's why Empire Today is offering $350 off new floors for PHLY Eagles listeners. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be frustrating. You might talk to somebody who was working, somebody today was working in plumbing yesterday. These are not experts necessarily. Empire Today, these are floor people. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/PHLY for details.
Let me tell you about Olipop, and we're supposed to tell you about our soda story. I'll give you a quick soda story. It's back in middle school. It's break. I'm trying to talk to Julia. She's got all these people around her, so I'm like, all right, fine. You know what? So I'm gonna go to the soda machine, and I got 75 cents, and I'm getting a wild cherry Pepsi. And I did this from time to time, and then I realized, man, soda's really not healthy for me, right? So I haven't really drank soda since. And then I'm here in the office, and I see Olipop. And this is terrific. It's the world's first functional soda with a classic soda taste and the benefits of plant-based fiber, prebiotics, and other botanical ingredients to support gut health. So I know that I'm not just getting good taste, I'm also getting a healthy drink. Olipop is a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of fiber per can. Olipop is available online and available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including the most recent launch at all Wawa stores. I'm a frequent Wawa customer, so this is great. Olipop's debut in Wawa couldn't be more of a match made in heaven. A delicious, healthy drink meets a convenience store, both adored by a cult following. The 2 flavors debuting in Wawa are classic root beer and strawberry vanilla, the 2 most popular flavors. Use the code PHLY for $20 off their next Olipop order, and the discount code only applies to one-time orders, not to subscription orders. Olipop is sold online, drinkolipop.com, and it's also on Amazon, and available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and Go Puff.
Jaguars also releasing Rayshon Jenkins, it sounds like, their safety. Now, one of the other takeaways that I had from this list, Zach, is that there are so many safeties out there, and I think if you don't go for the big swing on Xavier McKinney, you can definitely be patient here, and the price is going to come down. There are going to be lots of starting caliber players who are available, but one of the guys on the list, and it has been reported already that the Eagles have some amount of interest in bringing him back, is C.J. Gardner-Johnson. What would you make of a reunion there?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. On my Howie Roseman free agency thing the other day, I had the free agency thing, meaning 5 moves we would make if we were Howie. I had C.J. Gardner-Johnson as my wild card at safety on my list. After I mentioned Jordan Fuller, and then I mentioned Darnell Savage, and then I wanted to get in a C.J. Gardner-Johnson discussion, but we were already kind of tight on time at that point. I really like C.J. Gardner-Johnson as a player. I was impressed with him 2 years ago. I've been impressed with him when he was in New Orleans. I really didn't see him much with the Lions last year because he was injured. I thought he brought an attitude and a toughness that the Eagles frankly missed this past year. I know there was kind of complaints about him freelancing, but I think they clearly missed him. That said, it did not end well. Now, business is business, right? That you can patch things up. But C.J. Gardner-Johnson was not happy with the way the Eagles valued him last year. And I think the Eagles valued him consistent with what the rest of the league did. But when it got to the end, I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson was ready to sign elsewhere as opposed to staying in Philly. And so that would need to be patched up. And I think you referenced this 2 weeks ago when we mentioned CJ. There were comments on social media about Philly and whatnot.
It's mostly about Gannon.
Was it mostly Gannon?
Yeah.
Okay. So then that's fine because he actually has a lot in common with Eagles fans then, because they have a lot of social media comments about Gannon. That said, yeah, it was a real no-sell on your part.
That was fine.
Okay.
You were rolling. I thought.
Okay, yeah.
I was trying not to interrupt you for once.
I appreciate that. Yeah, really good, or a good player who I've seen him in this style of defense, and he was good. Again, there was freelancing that you need to account for, but there's also playmaking and toughness. A young player, versatility. He can help you in the slot. He can help you as a safety. And frankly, his stock did not go up last year because of the injury. So if you can get him at a number you like, I went over my free agency rules last year. Don't pay for a career year. You're not paying for a career year. Don't pay for, I said the age curve matters. The scheme matters. Both of those factor in here, and they work. I would totally be on board with a C.J. Gardner-Johnson signing. I just don't know what his frame of reference is about Philly right now.
Young, yes, turns 27 in December. He has also been injured a lot lately. He missed 5 games in 21, 5 games with the Eagles in 22, and then 14 regular season games with the Lions last year with a torn pectoral. Came back and played okay in the playoffs. My initial instinct, without knowing what the numbers involved would be and who I'll start talking to, is that I would be a little bit skittish if the Eagles went back to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. It would feel a little bit to me like they were trying to chase something from the past and looking behind as opposed to looking ahead. We made the case last year. Like I thought that C.J. Gardner-Johnson was the perfect player to date for a year and not marry, right? And not commit to long term, because there's a lot of volatility both in the personality and the play style.
Yeah.
Now, you want to tell me that like the attitude was missed? I think that's fair. But because there are so many options, I think that Howie Roseman going for like reunions sometimes is a little bit too convenient. And maybe there is a reason for that, because if you know them, you can be a little bit more confident in your assessments, right? And in your evaluations. But it would feel a little bit too clean to me if they just, last year we were hoping to bring in Vic Fangio and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and well, we got Vic back. We might as well go back to C.J.
So I hear your point. We're in March. We always do these blind resume tests in college basketball. If you looked at C.J. Gardner-Johnson from a blind resume test perspective and you divorce the context from it, I think you'd be impressed with that resume. But you can't divorce the context from it. So I hear what you're saying in terms of going back. I don't think it's chasing something. I mean, it's not like bringing back Deshaun Jackson, who had 6 years in Philly. It's not. I don't view it in that sense. He had 1 year here. They wanted to keep him last year. I did my 10-step guide to the offseason last year, which I will do this week for allphly.com. And in that, I had re-signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson, let James Bradbury walk. I do think that was the Eagles' plan last year. Re-sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson, let James Bradbury walk. When C.J. Gardner-Johnson wanted more money than they were willing to pay, and James Bradbury was getting less interest than they thought he was going to get, or I guess less money than they thought he was going to get, then that changed their plans. But I disagree with you in terms of them chasing. I think it's a good age profile. It's a good player profile. And I would divorce that context. The conversation you said that had merit to me is he is injury prone. And one thing I've realized is that injured players get injured. And I understand if injuries are all independent. I mean, it's not like this one, that one, that one. But players who are durable tend to be durable. Players who are injured tend to be injured. It's not always the case. Malik Jackson was extraordinarily durable when the Eagles signed him. Then he became an injured player. DeAndre Swift had an injury history. He was very durable last year. So nothing's absolute here. But I would be in favor of them signing C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, I just like there are so many safeties
That
who would be an improvement for the Eagles, even knowing that they want Sidney Jones to be there eventually, right? It's McKinney at the top, assuming that Winfield's getting the tag,
Yes.
right? C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Cameron Curl, who's 25, Jordan Fuller, who's 26, Geno Stone, who's 25, Julian Blackmon, who's 26, Kyle Duggar, who's 28 because he entered the league so old, Jeremy Chin, ya boy, Jordan Whitehead, who's 27, Deshaun Elliott, who's 27, started for Vic Fangio last year, Darnell Savage, who's 27, and Brandon Jones, who was involved with Fangio last year. That's like over 10 guys who were just in the top 53 that I have here. Now, we can argue with the order, but like those are all guys who would step in and be improvements on Kevin Byard.
Oh, I agree. This is a deep safety class. This is a good time for the Eagles to need a safety. I think that's going to be their priority.
And Eddie Jackson, too, if you're talking about an older, more of a Band-Aid player.
I'm expecting the Eagles to be very aggressive in adding core players to their defense in free agency. And frankly speaking, they've had more success signing safeties than they had signing linebackers. And they haven't had a lot of success drafting safeties. And so I do think that's a position they're going to address. And you hit it on the head well 2 shows ago rather. One thing we have to keep in mind is that Sidney Brown rather has versatility. Like when Sidney Brown comes back, you can use him in the slot. You can use him as a third safety. I don't think Reed Blankenship has like cemented himself as a long-term player for you. So I think he's a good player.
I think he's pretty good.
No, I think he's a good player. But I'm saying,
healthy.
Yeah, I still think they're going to sign a safety here and sign a starting safety. And I think they view safety as a major need. It's an important spot in this Fangio defense. And this is a good year to have one for the reasons you said. This is a loaded safety class. And there's a reason for it. I keep hearing, why don't the Eagles draft a safety? Why don't the Eagles draft a safety? Well, I know we had the conversation with Fran about the delta in draft value, but safeties tend to hit the markets. Edge rushers don't tend to hit the markets. It's that simple.
Is there an edge rusher who appeals to you if the Eagles do end up trading Hassan Reddick, aside from Chase Young?
Okay, I was going to say Chase Young. Chase Young appeals to me because I think there's a lot of talent there. Look, he missed time because of injury. That's what pushed him back. You're talking about the former number 2 pick in the draft, just a dynamic player. If he's going to be on a 1-year show-me deal, or if this is like a Jadeveon Clowney situation, he would really appeal to me. But then again, I don't know what the situation with San Francisco is going to be, but I do like Chase Young. I think from the situational pass rusher perspective,
I don't think San Francisco can afford to pay him.
You don't think so?
Yeah.
I think he might sign a 1-year deal and reset his value. But Josh Uche, who I mentioned last week in our exercise, I like the pass rush production. I like the age profile, of course. I like a lot of what he did both with the Patriots and in his last year at Michigan in Don Brown's defense. But you're not getting an every down edge rusher. And again, this is similar to the Keely Ringo conversation. The Eagles need to have an honest conversation in that building about what Nolan Smith is and what Nolan Smith isn't. And if you trade Hassan Reddick, they really need to have a good plan here. Like the obvious answer I could give you, and you talked about him well in your write up is Jonathan Grenard is it Greenard or Grenard?
I think it's Grenard.
Yeah, Grenard from the Texans came off a real productive year. You're paying for a contract year in that case, but he was all the advanced pass rush metrics speak favorably on him. He's also a Sheil Kapadia favorite. I don't know if that's the direction I would go.
Grenard.
Yeah, but I do think the Nolan Smith part of this is a big conversation here. Like, I don't know if you can count on Nolan Smith next year. And I think that if Nolan Smith becomes the player that you want him to become, it's gravy. It's even better. You have a decision next year with Josh Sweat entering the final year of his contract, right? But I don't think you can go into it and say, all right, we're going to trade Hassan Reddick, and we got Nolan Smith emerging here, and then we sign a situational guy. I don't love this edge rusher class outside of Dallas Turner. So, yeah, that's one where maybe you're looking at trades.
And maybe this is a little bit of us talking out of the both sides of our mouths because we, on one hand, say play the young guys, but on the other hand, it's like, well, is Nolan Smith ready for that? I think that position is different because you need so many bodies. You're not expecting anybody to play every snap. Like, you're going to rotate. I think you need Nolan Smith to be like penned into the number 3 edge rusher spot. And if you trade Hassan Reddick away, then he can handle some of that, in space stuff. But you still need, even if you re-sign Brandon Graham, he's your number 4 defensive end. You need somebody else to take those like base down snaps on the outside next to Josh Sweat.
Agreed. Now, what I would do here, and I'm just kind of workshop this in my mind, but I would trade the number 22 overall pick for Brian Burns. Josina Anderson said yesterday that the that the Panthers have suspended contract talks with him. He's getting tagged today. The Panthers have resisted trading him in the past. They got a huge offer 2 years ago from the Rams. They got more offers at the trade deadline this year. So it doesn't look like they're trying to move him, but it also doesn't look like they're at a point in their contract negotiations where the two sides are even close. If they are willing to, if they're tagging Burns to trade him, and the price isn't 2 first-rounders like it was 2 years ago, even if you have to give him a $28 million contract, whatever, I think that's the reports of what he's looking for. He's someone who I would be really interested in. You love them coming out of the draft. He's young. He's got traits.
He's been productive.
A change of scenery player. Yeah, I think that I'm all for trading a first-round pick for an in-your-prime edge rusher. Ringo Island says, no way, Zach. We can disagree.
Yeah, I would first-round pick is a lot. I think he's worth it, and it's not an early first-round pick. I would actually be a little bit more hesitant about that just because I want to keep my first-round picks.
Okay. Look, that's fair. I see your point. If you're trading Reddick, so if you're trading Reddick for a second and then you sign, and then you trade a first for Burns
3 second-round picks
and you pay him, that would interest me. Now, someone could say, why don't you just pay Reddick in that case? Burns is younger. I think the world of Hassan Reddick. I don't want to say Reddick's a better player, but I really like the upside of Brian Burns.
I do wonder if I was thinking about this earlier, and a little bit related to the Sneed conversation too. Did the AJ Brown trade and the success of it change Howie Roseman's calculation for, as opposed to trading for like a 28-year-old Darius Slay? Like, is it worth it to trade premium picks for a player at a premium position in the prime of their career?
Good question. I think if it's a premium play, I think it's as long as it's a blue chip player, then yes, they did this for Jason Peters. It was one of the best trades they ever made. So yes, if it's a blue chip player, if your evaluation of Brian Burns is that this is one of the best players in the league at his position, then I would do it.
Yeah.
Real quick, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I had this in my notes over the weekend. We didn't get to it yesterday because of the Kelce conversation, but Christian Wilkins, it looks like he's going to hit the market. And the Eagles, Howie Roseman said they don't have a need at defensive tackle. They're turning to that. Similarly, though, if you're saying, I get this, I'm looking in the camera when I say this, the 3-4-4-3 thing is not, I know that's kind of like a tired narrative, right? On passing downs, you're not in a 3-man front, but if you're looking at this like you're having a nose tackle and then you're having 2-3 techniques, right? And then you're having 2 stand-up edge rushers, then Christian Wilkins, that's like an Eagles type move in the sense that this is a guy that they loved coming out of Clemson. They were interested in trading up in the draft. They couldn't get it done. He thrived last year under Vic Fangio. I'm expecting the Arizona Cardinals to go after him. Our friends in the PHNX show yesterday had a good Christian Wilkins segment. But that's someone I could see. If you're looking for a wild card type signing, I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, I am not a Christian Wilkins guy.
Okay. Because the career year part of it?
I think for one, it's the paying for a career year that you talked about. He had 9 sacks this year for Fangio. His previous high was 4.5. That was 2 years ago. He has been a good player, a very good player. he's a little bit older. He entered the league older. So, when they signed Javon Hargrave, he was 27. Wilkins will be 28 and turns 29 in December. You're going to have to pay a lot to get him, and it's going to have to be a long stretch of guaranteed years. I don't know that I think he's going to be a difference maker for that long, especially given the fact that you have used 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick. I think you do want to sign Milton Williams long-term.
Okay, so that's the part of this. So you're expecting them to try to sign Milton Williams long-term?
Well, that's not the differentiating factor, but I think that they will.
Okay.
I am not in favor of spending the majority of their cap space on Christian Wilkins.
I wouldn't do it either. I would prioritize edge rusher. It was just something when I was expecting him to get tagged. When I saw he wasn't getting tagged, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I know they really liked him, and I know he thrived under Vic Fangio. And if you're thinking structurally this defense is going to look different, that you're going to need essentially 3 interior defensive linemen, then that could be of interest.
Yeah,
but it's not something I would do.
If you spend that much on a free agent defensive tackle after having used back-to-back first-round picks on defensive tackles, you're admitting that those were not good investments.
Or at least,
specifically the Jordan Davis one.
Yeah. But in theory, they slot in with Jordan Davis on one in the middle, and then Carter on one side and Wilkins on the other. I would not spend that much money along my defensive line. I would rather spend money at edge rusher. And I keep going back to when Josina had that yesterday about Brian Burns. I was like, look, that's the move I would make if I were Howie. That's the type of player I would give up the 22 pick in the draft for.
Okay. Well, if you want to watch Brian Burns and Christian Wilkins play for the Eagles this year, at least in your dreams, you could go to Game Time in your dreams, because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you, with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. They've got flash deals on last-minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Images of seat views, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. It is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. Just 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never, ever, 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 ever have to dig through your email. Tickets make great holiday gifts, and what better way to celebrate and ring in the new league year than
Happy
with
New
tickets.
Year.
Will you be waking up your lovely wife at 4 p.m. on Wednesday as the new league year rolls over?
Well, she won't be sleeping at 4 p.m., but if I texted her a Happy New Year, she wouldn't understand what I was referring to. But maybe I'll give you a Happy New Year text.
Let's make it the best one yet.
I texted Matt. A shout out to Matt Gelb. Happy birthday to him today. I texted him today. Make this the best year yet.
Happy birthday, Matt Gelb.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Gelb. And by the way, if you want to snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
PHLY has a lot of great stuff going on right now, including a trade deadline show for the Flyers. I'm monitoring this Flyers trade deadline. I'm curious to see what they're showing. I'm watching the PHLY Flyers show, and you have Charlie and Bill, and they. So that is coming up. We can get you all the information on that. Also, there is a big PHLY hockey diehard convergence. Join Charlie, Bill, and the other PHLY hockey diehards in the Wells Fargo Center on March 14th as the Flyers take on the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Eastern Conference Showdown presented by Olipop. Takeover tickets include pregame meeting with the PHLY crew and a game ticket in the assembly room to enjoy the game with other diehards. Check out all of our upcoming events at allphly.com under the events calendar. Follow our PHLY Phillies team for details on opening day. I've given you a shout out. I've given Bo's article a shout out. There's so many reasons to subscribe to Die Hard, including premium written content for members at allphly.com. We have some more Die Hard content coming up. Also 20% off events. Dope. There's great merchandise for all teams. Free shirts when you become a member, and a members-only Discord at the PHLY Lounge. Let me just tell you real quick while we're at it, the event coming up. Let's see. It's at Chicken and the Egg is the one I was referring to, but that's the watch party with Charlie and Bill. You can check that out on the PHLY show.
I just texted Matt Gelb, happy birthday, let's make it the best one yet.
Yep.
And he said, you sound like ZB.
I'm on the topic of birthday shout-outs. We have a loyal listener who wants to say that his father, Oliver, is turning 60 today and is going to be watching the show. And it would quote make his freaking day if we said happy birthday. So happy birthday, Oliver. Thanks for tuning into our shows.
Oliver Platt. Loved you in Lake Placid.
Did you like Lake Placid?
I did like Lake Placid. I haven't seen it in like 20 years.
What'd you like about that movie when you saw it?
It was an enjoyable hour and a half. I don't know. I haven't revisited it.
No, I think we've discussed this in the past. You're a lake guy. Or Sheil's a lake guy. Sheil likes a lake more than a beach.
I do prefer a lake to a beach.
Okay.
You?
I mean, I've been to
wherever you can be the most, wherever has the best Wi-Fi.
Well, my Kindle has the books downloaded, so I don't need Wi-Fi there. But I do like it. Yeah, I usually have my phone at that point. I spend more time at a beach than a lake in like the past 20 years. But I have nothing against it. Yeah.
Julia, what about you?
At this age, you can play in the sand with the kids at a lake. I'm sorry, at a beach rather. Yeah, Julia, what about you? Lake or beach?
I love both. Anywhere I can be around water is great. I feel like there's a little more to do on a lake, I feel like, than an ocean, but
yeah, that's how I feel.
I love both.
There's more to do at a lake.
A little bit more relaxed on a lake, I feel.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And I said this as like someone who has not spent a lot of time at lakes, but in my idyllic vision of it, yeah, give me a lake house over a beach house.
Okay. And you mentioned river. Did you see a River Wild with Kevin Bacon? Is that like
no?
Okay.
No.
I saw that movie. It's fine. They actually had a remake recently.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to follow up on the Lake Placid.
It's more like Huck Finn on the Mississippi.
Ah, okay.
I don't know.
I've never been. Yeah.
You've never read Huck Finn?
I never read Huck Finn. No,
Really?
I'm familiar with the character, but I've never read Huck Finn. Not a big fiction guy.
Yeah, we've talked about this
Yeah.
as well. I feel like I'm surprised that you didn't have to read that in school.
Huck Finn? I mean, I read the Odyssey. I remember reading that. That took a while.
That's
to
the
read.
only book you read in high school?
No, ninth grade was a big Odyssey year.
Famously, yeah.
Yes.
Basically, I'd like to go through like the ages of your life. There was the creative heater year. There was the Odyssey year.
Yeah.
There was the Topanga 3 years.
No, I think you overstate the Topanga thing.
The
But
Jennifer Love Hewitt era, of course.
there was definitely a Jennifer Love Hewitt era for sure. Yes. All right, let's get on with the show.
All right, let me give you a couple of woodpecker rathers because
Please.
I want to know, if you're plotting out where you want to spend your money, but the different places that you need to address needs. Woodpecker, you rather sign Xavier McKinney and Josie Jewell, or Jordan Brooks and Eddie Jackson.
Xavier McKinney and Josie Jewell.
That was a little bit unfair because I think Jewell's more expensive than Eddie Jackson would be, but explain why.
Yeah, I think McKinney's the better player, the younger player, emerging. I would rather pay a safety than a linebacker at this point. And so the two big ticket signings there, in the latter, it's the Brooks signing. In the former, it's the McKinney signing. If you said, would you rather sign McKinney or Brooks, I'd rather sign McKinney.
Okay. How about Blake Cashman at linebacker, Jordan Whitehead at safety, and Tony Pollard at running back? Or you sort of skimp on the defensive positions. You go Drew Tranquil at linebacker, Deshaun Elliott at safety, but you pay up for Saquon Barkley.
I don't really love either of those categories or either of those options, but the first one, I'm not paying big money at running back. There are too many good running backs on the market that I would rather bolster the defense. That's where I would prioritize it.
What are your running back expectations, or what would you do?
What I would do, and my expectation for what they will do, is what I said on the show Friday, which is let the market come to them, potentially re-sign Swift. But I think that, like I said, there are two classes in one here because of the three players who were tagged last year. There are 6 or 7 high-level running backs on the market, and there are not going to be 6 or 7 running backs getting big money. So now all teams could operate that way, and the whole market could be depressed. But I think this is a point you would probably make. If you're a running back and you don't sign on day 1 or day 2, I mean, the money that you want might not be there. So I actually think that the Eagles could be in position to bring Swift back on a 1-year deal.
It's Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins is a little bit interesting, I think.
I was going to say Austin Eckler.
And then you get to Austin Eckler. I think those are the 7 guys.
Well, Devin Singletary's coming off a really good year. Similar to Swift, Singletary had a big year.
I think that if you wait and one of the, and it's not going to be Saquon, most likely, but if one of the Jacobs, Henry, Pollard tier has dropped down to about the Swift price range, I would be interested in that for a 1-year deal. And then if Dobbins is affordable, I might be a little bit more curious about that. Absent that, I think I would not mind bringing Swift back on a 1-year deal.
That's the approach I would take. I think you and I are in agreement there. I also would not roll out or would not be like totally ripping on them if you sign A.J. Dillon and then you draft Jalen Wright from Tennessee, and you kind of pair this explosive back with this with this like big physical back.
Yeah, I do not feel the same way at running back as I do about what we talked about offensive line yesterday, or safety and linebacker. I don't think that they need to solve this position before the draft. I think they can let it. There will be people available after the draft that will materially affect what they can do.
Now, how about wide receiver 3? Because we both agree they need to upgrade. They can upgrade there. But by all accounts, and we saw this in the time testing on Saturday, this is a loaded wide receiver class. Are you okay waiting for the draft of wide receiver?
I would like to have an option on the roster that is not Britton Covey before the draft. I talked the other day. I like Noah Brown from this group at that price point. Now, it is a really bad class of wide receiver free agents, and so I'm guessing that some of those prices are going to be more expensive than you're willing to pay for those guys. So it might not be the case that they sign someone, but I would much rather just not have to force a wide receiver in like the 3rd round or the 4th round if there wasn't the right one on the board.
I know you're knee deep in the free agency and you haven't really done all your draft work yet. You're going to love this wide receiver class. You're going to have fun with this group. I'm excited to have Coach Flynn on, hopefully, knock on wood, to talk about these, because
hopefully you'll remember next time that he was on the show.
There's so many different types of wide receivers, and it's just a loaded class. Okay.
Anything else from these guys to talk about before we get into the Quacketology tomorrow?
No,
do you think there's gonna be a lot of former Fangio or former Kellen Moore players? Like, you think they're gonna be dipping into that?
Well, the Kellen Moore thing's interesting because when Kellen Moore was at his best, he was in Dallas, and as you've documented many times, you don't love going to that Dallas well. Would that concern you with a Tony Pollard?
I don't think it concerns me as much at running back, as much as the fact that he's just a running back with carries on his body. Like Noah Brown is not like a guy who is like, oh my God, that's a cowboy. He's coming into this building. I mean, he played there for 5 or 6 years, but it's not like Zeke coming in or Orlando Scandrick
or DeMarco Murray. Yeah. Look, I think, and you and I can disagree on this. Reasonable minds can disagree that the Eagles feel like they can probably go out and play a game with their offense tomorrow. and that the heavy lifting during the next month will be on the defensive side of the ball. That's my expectation. That's a roundabout way of saying I think Vic Fangio is going to have far more say than Kellen Moore, because I don't think they're going to do a lot to this offense. I really don't. I think, especially if they can bring Swift back, I think it's going to be depth spots here and there, and then adding young pieces in the draft.
I believe that's what they're saying. I don't believe that that's true.
You don't think that's what they're thinking, or you don't think that's accurate way of thinking?
I don't think that that's what they're actually thinking.
Interesting. Okay.
I think...
Where do you see these spots to... you think offensive line, like we talked yesterday?
I just think that they know their path to success is for the offense to be elite. Mm-hmm. They need to get the defense to respectability, and they have work to do to get that. They have to fill spots at safety and linebacker and maybe corner and maybe edge rusher. But I think they know that if they're going to be competing for a Super Bowl, it's going to be on the backs of the offense. And maybe part of their, like, the way to do that is just all on changing the scheme. But I don't think that's the way that they're thinking. And I don't think Howie Roseman's history tells us that he's going to be fine on offense. Like, may not look like there are that many spots to add starters right now, but the depth matters. And I think that they're going to use resources to improve the offense. Offensive
line in particular, or skill spots?
I would not be surprised if they are using a premium resource to add another weapon to the offense. Okay.
And I think that resource is just coming in the draft. So we're in
I
agreement
think that's
there.
most likely.
I don't think it's going to be money. If we can have a quick 90-second backup quarterback conversation, do you think the Eagles sign? Do you think they sign it because you have that category in your rankings? Do you think they sign a QB2, or do you think they see what they have in Tanner McKee?
Yeah, I don't know what to believe on this one. Like, there are a lot of reasonable options available, and a lot of the league does not often pay for backup quarterbacks, and so it might just be that they wait and see, and if, Jameis Winston is available for $3 million, that they find that too good to pass up. But I don't think that they're going to make it a priority. Obviously, it depends entirely on their evaluation of Tanner McKee, but maybe the fact that they're changing offensive schemes affects that a little bit, and you want to bring in Easton Stick for $1.5 million or something like that. But I don't have a strong gut feel right there. What about you?
It's the first year that we're seeing this Jalen Hurts contract kick in. We actually never saw the Carson Wentz contract kick in. Right. So I know for a fact they value backup quarterback. I also know they really liked what they saw last year in Tanner McKee. I think they're going to give Tanner McKee a chance to be the backup. But yeah, if there's a guy who, like you mentioned, Jacoby Brissett, if Nick Sirianni really values having him in the quarterback room,
I think
and
someone
the price
will
is
pay
right,
him. I think he's good enough. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I don't think they pay big money for one, but I do think it's something that they look at.
Yeah. I'm curious to see, and we'll put a couple quarterbacks. We'll put Jacoby in the Quacketology for tomorrow. Maybe a couple other ones. But
I always like Jacoby.
You ever cover him?
I've spoken to him a number of times. He represents himself, which I also respect.
Nice.
Yeah, which you're seeing more and more now. Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't have an agent, a formal agent. Caleb Williams says a management team, but not a formal agent.
Would you say that you respect that as someone who appreciates people like taking on extra responsibility, or would you say you respect it as someone who likes a good deal?
Probably the latter, actually. It's like, no, look, it's much harder if you're Jacoby Brissett, because I think the agents really matter when you're negotiating a deal. If you're like the number 1 or the number 2 pick in the draft, your contract's fixed. Like, I'm now there are deals you can work out where the agent's making the money on the second contract and not the first. But you see that in the NBA sometimes. But I'm like, if I know this is what I'm getting, why am I giving you the percentage points? But I digress.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles Show. Yes, trying out calling it the Eagles Show instead of the Eagles Podcast, since it's also on video. But I don't know. Most of you are listening in your ears, so who knows? That'll do it. Thank you for listening and watching. Check out the articles on allphly.com, that top 100 list, and our Jason Kelce pieces. Back tomorrow at noon as we kick off Quacketology, the 2-day event. Cannot wait to crown the champion of who we think is the most likely free agent to be signed by the Eagles. Looking forward to it. So, for Julia and Zach and all of us here at PHLY, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Talk to you tomorrow. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.